Okay, hey guys, Christopher Dent here. I'm gonna demo my new app for you. It's my JS Rails app. It's called Battleships. It was inspired by a few of the labs we did in combination with just my World War II history dorkiness, and also partly, of course, by actual game Battleship. Even though the gameplay is nothing like that at all. It's much more simple. But I think it's kind of a little bit fun, especially if you're a history nerd. And let's go forward with the demo now. So I'll show you how the game runs, and then we'll do a quick run through of the code. So as you can see here on the left side of the screen, got the ability to scroll down through all the available ships, which are part of the app. They're part of the seed data. So and there is no option to add a ship or anything like that. What you see is what you get. For now, I might add that feature in the future, but for now, I'm pretty happy with the selection we've got here. There's really no need to have more than this. I think I've got something like 5 ships from each of the different countries involved. Anyway, you then choose your fleet. Let's say we're going to do a battleship. You're going to do a cruiser, another battleship. Going to do a submarine and a cruiser. And we get our alert that the maximum capacity has been reached. Click OK, and this triggers a bunch of things. So what just happened there was it triggered the addition of a computer fleet, which is randomly generated. That was one of the hardest parts for me. The whole project was figuring out how to do that, but it works. And then we got the user fleet here. And then we've got the battle button. So clicking that obviously triggers the battle between the two fleets. What will happen then is the combined value of each ship in a fleet is added up, and then the total value of each fleet is compared against each other. The ship's values are slightly randomized. Like a battleship is something like, I don't know, between 40 and 50 points, a random number between 40 and 50. Cruiser, I think, is a random number between 20 and 30. A sub, for example, because in reality, there was a lot more variability with them. They weren't that great, but when they did make a hit, they really made a hit. So I think the variability there is something like 25 to 50. So it just adds to make the game a little bit more interesting than if each ship class had a static value. So anyway, battle button, I've got it rumbling there. I had some little CSS fun. We're going to click battle. Boom. I lose, my fleet faded away, and then we get the alert, computer wins. You really let this app beat you? Sad. That is kind of sad. I thought I picked a good fleet, but like I said, I had randomization to it. Yeah, no, they actually got quite lucky. They had one carrier, I guess, but anyway. And that's it. You click OK, and you get the option to play again, overlay everything else on the screen. It does pop your old fleet back up there just so you can see what fleet you had and maybe come up with a better strategy next time. Play again, just as a simple reload. But it also does a fetch request, which clears the actual fleet arrays in Rails. So it's just a totally fresh game now. And again, select your 5 ships. So endless loop. If you have fun with it, you could do this for a while. Not going to win any Game of the Year awards, but I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. I've spent quite a lot of time on it. Might be able to do some more CSSing, make it look a little bit prettier. And I do have a few ideas for future improvements, but I need to move forward with the curriculum. So I'm going to go ahead and get this submitted pretty soon. Now, I'm trying not to make this demo video too long, so let's just do a very quick run through of the code. Let's start with the Rails, the backend. Models, good place to start. I've got models for fleet, ship, and user. User's not being used right now. That's a potential future enhancement, but fleet, oh, these are the serializers, sorry. Most of the methods are in the actual models, yeah. Here we go, ship. Ship belongs to fleet. That's optional, and that's for a reason, because sometimes I want the ships to have a null fleet. Like when they first load the game, they should all be null. So that seems to have done the trick there. Then it does a validation on ship count valid. That is to make sure that you don't have any more than 5 ships. Goes down to this private method here. And then the only other really important method in the ship model is the point system, which, as I was explaining to you before, randomized numbers. But I mean, obviously the random number for a battleship is going to be higher than the random number for a cruiser. Moving right along, fleet. Not much going on in fleet actually at all. I've got to double check actually. I did have a few little problems with my ship count method with the validation, just making the app crash before. So I implemented this fleet question mark method, and anyway, I think we'll get the answer when I get to the controllers. Ships controller, index. So index obviously just renders some JSON and shows you a list of all your ships. Show could do the same for one ship. Create, there's nothing because I don't have the ability to create a ship yet. Update, so this is where things start to get a little interesting. It's not really a traditional update method, but what it does is it exists only to assign specific fleet ID to a ship. And in particular, it's just for the human fleet. So ship.update params ID. So it's basically updating the ship based on whatever's in your params. Fleet ID will be params fleet ID. If the ship exists, I needed to add this line because it wouldn't seed without it. Then you can save the ship and render your JSON. Otherwise, ship.arta messages fleet max. So right, yes, I believe we're still using the method that's in the ship model for the fleet max. Fleets controllers where things get a little funky. I'm doing the video now, but I am going to make a small change before I submit this. That's this method right here. But anyway, index, just same, it'll show you the fleets. It's actually really useful to make sure my refresh method is working, to make sure that the fleets are actually cleared when I click reload. And yeah. And we've got create. This should not be using the create action because it's not at all what it's doing. It was just the first action that came to mind. So I need to create a custom route for this, and I will before my review. But anyway, what it does is it's just used in the same way that update is used under ship pretty much, except it is using, it's assigning ships to fleet 2. So it's a slightly different approach. And it seems to work best this way. I don't know why. I did try all different variations, but anyway, it looks for, right, I think the reason I did it in fleet under than ship was because it made it easier for me to filter out ships that already had a fleet ID assigned. Like I didn't want the computer to be using the same ships as the user. So anyway, that is what it does. This is probably not necessary. Oh yeah, right. Okay. No, that's all working fine. I just need to change it to a custom route. Speaking of, and then the update method. Why didn't I use the update method for that? Because I got the update method doing something else, and it is an update in a way. This is what the reset game uses basically. It just resets both fleets to an empty array. Battle. This is, speaking of custom routes, this is a custom route. It was kind of towards the end when I just kind of, I had forgotten a bit about Rails routing because it's been a while. I've been working on this project, working on JS since before COVID was a thing. So I did have to go back and do a little refresher on custom routes, but I did. And then I was able to implement this fleet battle method. And this is the method that determines which fleet wins, I mean, each of the ships go into each array, you compare the two arrays, and then you render the appropriate message. Okay, this is getting long, so let's hurry. Index.js. So everything was in here originally, but I had to refactor to be object-oriented. And I think I've done it now. I hope it meets the requirement, but I've done my best to object orient all of this code. So right now, all the index.js does is launch a few methods. It initiates an instance of a new game, and then it resets the fleet just to be sure that you're starting with no ships in your fleet. It selects your ships, which we'll get to in a moment, and gets the ships. Again, we'll get to that in a moment. Some of these are in the game.js and some are in ship.js. I tried to make anything that was more like core functionality of the game in game.js, and then things that were just around the ship card. I put in ship.js, like the HTML the DOM elements I needed to modify and whatnot. I put them all in there. We'll start with game.js. It starts with a select ships method, which is very simple. Alert, select your ships. Then it moves right on to the get ships method. Now that's where we do our first fetch request. It's just a get request that goes into the API and brings all the data back home to the DOM. Then it refers us over to a method in the ship card class, which is ship.js, which would be the build ship, which would be the build method. And that method builds the card for each individual ship. This is actually something that can be removed now because I've moved all of that right into the ship.js. Assign fleet. So I want the ships assigned to a fleet when you click add to fleet. So that's mostly what this does. It does a patch fetch request. And while it does that, it assigns each of those ships a fleet ID of 1. Remember, they're null when you start. This assigns it to 1. Right, and it assigns the ship based on the target of the dataset ID that you've clicked on. From there, we have a method in the ship card class, remove the add buttons. You don't need the add button on it once it's in the battlefield because you already selected it. And then we've got this .assign computer fleet, which is triggered at that point too. As you can probably imagine, that does something very similar to what the user did, but just for the computer. Move ship card, that just refers to the ship card class. So again, I may just kill that. I'm not going to do it right now. Assign comp fleet. This is the method that really, that assigns the ships from the, that selects the ships for the computer fleet and assigns them to fleet ID 2. Once that gets done, we use that. You know, I don't even know if that's the best place for these, but anyway, right here is where we trigger the battle and the move computer fleet. And by battle, it's not actually the actual battle, it's that's the battle button. Shipcard.battle just generates a battle button. So once that computer fleet has been defined and rendered, a battle button pops up, and that computer fleet also shows up on the right side of the screen next to the user fleet. We got a catch here too. Play again, that's the big button that comes up at the end once you want to play again. I've got it on a timeout to try to coincide with when the fleet finishes fading out, when the losing fleet finishes fading out. So if losing fleet fades out, then the play again button pops up. And then that button, of course, is an event listener for reload. Again, this is probably something that I can just refer directly to ship card. I probably don't need a method for it here, but for now I'm going to leave it. Reload. This method here, this factors into the next, right here. Reset fleet. You know, so reset fleet does a patch request, which, as I explained when I was looking at the controllers, all that does is resets the fleet's the fleet.ships array to be an empty array. And then winner, again, this is just towards the end of the game. I want the message about who won to pop up at an appropriate time. Now ship.js. Like I said, I tried to take all the HTML and DOM manipulation out of game.js and pop that in here. So pretty much any DOM manipulation and pretty much all the DOM manipulation involved with moving or modifying the ship cards will be found in this file. This is that build method I mentioned. This method builds your ship card as you load the game, actually. Move, this is when the user clicks add to fleet, it moves it to the other side. Battle, this is this makes the battle button pop up. Remove add buttons, again, removes all the add buttons from the card because once it's on the battlefield, they're not necessary and they look funny. Move comp fleet does something similar to move, but for the computer fleet. It has its own fetch request, so I'm not a huge fan of having the two separate methods that kind of do the same thing, but I think because the way I'm assigning the ships to the user and the way I'm assigning the ships to the computer are so different, I think I do just want to leave them separate for now. Maybe I'll be able to refactor it again in the future. Fight, this is the method that does a fetch request to compare the values of the two arrays. And it gets the JSON message based on who won. If the computer won, that JSON message is going to include the word computer. So then you have the human fleet fade out because the computer won. If not, the computer fleet fades out. And that's about, oh yeah, right, of course, last thing, new game.winner. So this pops up the winner, the message of who won, timed to coincide with the end of the fade out. So that is that, folks. I know, like I said, it's not going to win any Game of the Year awards, and it's pretty amateur, but I've done my best, and I hope that it'll be acceptable to the requirements of this project. Maximum capacity reached. Yeah, I won this time. All right. Thanks for your time, guys. Bye.